Hi there. Welcome to Reddit Confessions. Grab your drink, take a breath, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story. It's what happened when a woman thought she had it all, until the mall became the last place she expected to fall apart. It was raining. One of those awkward spring days where people wear flip-flops and umbrellas at the same time. The kind of day that feels heavy before it even begins. I wasn't planning to go to the mall. I actually hate the place. The artificial lights, the echo of plastic laughter in food courts, and perfume clouds from kiosks trying to sell you something you'll never use. But I went. I had to go. Not for her. I didn't even know she'd be there. That part. That was fate. Coincidence. A cruel joke by the universe. You decide. I was just pushing the stroller. Yeah. A stroller. I know what you're thinking, but don't get ahead of yourself. This wasn't some romantic, look what I've rebuilt, parade. No. It was borrowed. Temporary. A friend needed help for the afternoon, and I said yes because, well, I say yes to a lot of things now. It's easier than silence. I was walking past the indoor fountain, the one shaped like a dolphin spitting into marble, when I heard it. Her laugh. I could never mistake that laugh. Not in 1,000 years. That soft, breathy sound like she just heard the smartest joke in the world. The laugh I used to chase. The laugh that used to be mine. And there she was. Marla. With him. Mason. Holding their baby boy. They looked like a stock photo, coordinated outfits, matching smiles, the whole "we're so happy it hurts" thing. She didn't see me. Not at first. I stood there for a second too long. My chest tightened. I thought about turning around. Pretending I didn't exist. But then something strange happened. The child in my stroller, my friend's daughter, reached up and touched my face. Giggled. And something in me clicked. I pushed the stroller forward. Calmly. Right past her. She saw me. She blinked. She whispered something to Mason. And then she called my name. Ellis. I stopped. I shouldn't have. But I did. When I turned, she looked like someone just rewound her life and paused it at the worst moment. She glanced at the stroller. Then at me. Then back at the stroller. And she said. Is that your child? I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I knew, at that exact second, I had her full attention for the first time in 2 years. She didn't blink at first. Just stood there with her mouth slightly open, like her brain hadn't caught up with what her eyes were telling her. Mason was talking to the baby, bouncing him up and down, totally unaware that the past had just smacked his girlfriend in the face like a brick wall wrapped in guilt. Ellis, is that your baby? She repeated, but this time there was something different in her voice. A crack. Not fear exactly, more like panic wearing a mask of curiosity. I looked at the stroller slowly, like I needed to remember who I was pretending to be. Truth is, it wasn't about the child. It was about the illusion. She wanted to know if I had moved on, if I had beaten her to happiness. She needed to measure her decision against something real. But here's the thing. When someone shatters you, even the little victories feel like justice. I smiled. And I said, she's not mine. But today she is. She flinched. I'm helping out a friend, I added, casually. But yeah. I'm good with kids. Guess I've had time to learn. The silence between us was louder than the mall music overhead. It was like the entire food court went quiet just to hear what would happen next. Marla stepped forward, her eyes locked onto mine like she couldn't believe I was real. You look different, she finally said. You've lost weight. You cut your hair. I almost laughed. She left me while I was growing that hair out, said it made me look like a sad dog. But now. Now it made her hesitate. Guess heartbreak is good cardio, I replied, sharper than I meant to. Her face tightened. Mason finally noticed me and gave one of those awkward, polite nods that men give when they don't know if they should be territorial or clueless. Then the kid in my stroller, sweet little Maddie, picked up her sippy cup and chucked it across the floor like a grenade. It rolled to a stop right at Marla's feet. She bent down to pick it up, and for a moment, she was eye level with the child. "You have such beautiful eyes," she murmured. "She looks like..." I cut her off before she went there. "She's not mine," I said again, flat and firm. "But you thought she was, didn't you?" Marla stood up quickly. "I was just surprised. That's all." "Sure you were." I wanted to walk away. God, I should have walked away. But I didn't. Because something in her expression wasn't adding up. Not guilt. Not shame. It was something else entirely. She looked scared. That's when Mason finally spoke. "Hey babe, who's this?" She hesitated. Like she didn't want to say my name out loud. "This is Ellis," she said slowly. "My ex-husband." Mason looked confused. "You never said you were married." Boom. The tension broke like a plate hitting tile. Marla's cheeks went pale. I told you about him," she stammered. "No, you said you dated someone before me. You never said you were married." Mason looked at me. "Is that true?" I didn't need to answer. Her silence said everything. And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was radioactive. She tried to recover. It wasn't serious. We were young, and it didn't work out. That's all. I stepped in closer, not menacing, not smug. Just calm. "We were married 6 years. She left while pregnant with your son." She told me in the kitchen while I was making her favorite pancakes. Marla turned scarlet. Her hand gripped the stroller handle, my stroller, as if she needed support to keep standing. Mason's mouth opened like he was going to say something. But he didn't. And that's when Maddie started crying. Loud. Sharp. That baby wail that echoes through malls and makes everyone turn. I reached down, picked her up, and held her close. And in that moment, with a child in my arms, an ex who looked like a liar, and her boyfriend frozen like a man who just realized he was Plan B, I felt something I hadn't in 2 years. Control. Marla looked like she wanted to say something, maybe explain, maybe scream, maybe run. But I beat her to it. "Nice seeing you, Marla," I said gently. Hope the truth wasn't too heavy. Then I turned around. Walked away slowly. My heart pounding so hard I could barely feel my feet. But I didn't look back. I didn't have to. Because the next time we crossed paths, she was going to be the one chasing me. I didn't think I'd hear from her again. I genuinely didn't. I figured she'd go home, yell at Mason, maybe cry a little in the bathroom while her son babbled in the background. Then she'd move on like she always did, stitching over her past with half-truths and Instagram filters. That was Marla's way. Lie small enough and often enough, and even you start believing it. But less than 24 hours later, she texted me. A number I didn't recognize flashed across my screen while I was at my apartment, heating up leftover lasagna and half-watching some detective show I didn't really care about. The message was short. "Can we talk? Please." I stared at it for a full minute. It was like my phone was glowing with radiation. My heart did this annoying lurch, not out of hope or affection, but pure confusion. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. Instead, I muted the phone and let it sit face down on the counter like a ticking bomb. 15 minutes later, it rang. Same number. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave one. The next day, I got another text. "Ellis, I need to explain. It's important. Still, I said nothing. I didn't trust myself to open that door. Because here's the truth, when you've spent years healing from someone, the last thing you want to do is let them back in, even just for a conversation. Because sometimes, all it takes is a familiar voice to undo all your progress. But on the third day, she sent something different. A photo. It was blurry, clearly taken in a rush. A screenshot of a document, zoomed in on a single name. Mine. It was my name, attached to what looked like a school registration form. My stomach twisted. I zoomed in, blinked, and read it again. Father's name, Ellis, Archdeacon. Wait, what? I stared at the screen so long my eyes started to burn. Then another message popped up underneath the photo. It's not what you think. Please. Just meet me once. I owe you the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I kept asking myself impossible questions. Was the baby mine? No, couldn't be. She was already seeing Mason when she left. She told me it was his. She swore it was. But the dates, the timeline. I started doing math I didn't want to do. The next day, against every voice in my head screaming don't you dare, I agreed to meet her. We chose a neutral place, that old, dusty coffee shop on Willow Lane, the one we used to avoid because the coffee always tasted burnt and the chairs squeaked like dying birds. Funny how the least romantic places become the safest when your heart's already been chewed up. She was already sitting when I arrived, tucked into the corner, holding a paper cup with both hands like it might anchor her to the earth. Her hair was tied back. No makeup. Just Marla. The raw, unfiltered version of her I hadn't seen since before everything cracked. When she saw me, she stood, like part of her wasn't sure I'd really come. Thanks for meeting me, she said softly. I nodded but didn't sit right away. Is the kid mine? She flinched at how fast I went there. No warm-up. No pleasantries. She took a breath. I don't know. My legs nearly gave out. What do you mean you don't know? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. She looked down at her coffee. When I left, I was already pregnant. But I wasn't sure who the father was. Mason wanted to believe it was his, and honestly, I needed to believe it too. You were broken. And I was selfish. I sat down, hands trembling. And now? Now he's asking questions, she said. The baby's eyes are green. Neither of us have green eyes. But you do. I felt like someone had knocked the air out of my chest. I do have green eyes. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my throat dry. She looked up finally. Because I didn't think you'd want to know. You were always so fragile, Ellis. I thought I was sparing you. Sparing me. Like she was doing me a favor by erasing me from my child's life. I pushed my chair back and stood, nearly knocking it over. I don't know what you expect from me, Marla. But you don't get to rewrite the story now. You made your choices. I turned to leave. I didn't want to cry in front of her. I'd done that too many times already. But just as I reached the door, she called after me. There's one more thing. I stopped. I didn't turn. He's sick, she said quietly. Jonah's been having tests done. The doctors are asking for genetic background. And if he's yours, they'll need your medical history. Suddenly, this wasn't just about pain. This was about responsibility. And I realized. I might be a father to a child I'd never even met. And she might be the only person who could tell me what really happened. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I remember walking out of the coffee shop, but not how I got to my car. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, but not starting the engine. I sat there for over an hour, watching people come and go, moms pushing strollers, kids crying over dropped ice cream cones, a teenager skateboarding in the rain. Life moving forward. Me frozen in place. Could he really be mine? Jonah. That was the name she gave him, the name I saw posted online months ago, next to a pair of tiny shoes and a caption that said, "Mommy and Daddy can't wait to meet you." Back then, I had hated her for it. For how easily she seemed to swap me out for Mason. For how quickly I became a deleted file in her life story. Now I wasn't so sure what to feel. By the time I got back to my apartment, I was sick to my stomach. I sat on the floor for a long time, staring at a framed picture I hadn't taken down, one of me and Marla in a pumpkin patch, back when things still felt warm and stupid and real. She had orange leaves in her hair. I was holding a thermos of cider. We looked like people who knew how to love. I finally responded to her that night. "I'll take a test. But I want to do it at the hospital, not through you." She agreed instantly. 3 days later, I found myself in a sterile waiting room at St. Alden's General, flipping through a water-damaged magazine about hiking gear I'd never use. Marla was there too, sitting a few seats away. Mason wasn't. I didn't ask why. She didn't offer. When they called us in, my hands were shaking. I didn't want her to see, but I think she noticed. She always noticed everything when it didn't matter anymore. The nurse was gentle. She took the swab, labeled the sample, and told me results would take about a week. I asked if we could expedite it. She said maybe. Marla handed over Jonah's records, a whole folder of charts and notes and doctor scribbles. I caught a glimpse of a word I didn't like, anemia. Then another, possible genetic link. The moment we walked out into the parking lot, Marla touched my arm. "Ellis, if he's yours, I need your help. I can't do this alone." I pulled away. "You had your chance. You chose to do this alone." She didn't fight me on it. She just nodded, like she'd been expecting that answer. I didn't sleep much that week. My mind spiraled in every direction. What if he was mine? Could I just step into a child's life after 3 years and pretend to be a dad? What if he already called Mason Dad? Would I just be some biological footnote? And if he wasn't mine, what then? Just walk away. Try to forget this happened. 7 days later, the hospital called. I went in alone. Marla said she'd wait at home. I could barely hear the nurse's words over the blood pounding in my ears. "The results are in. Jonah is not a biological match to you." I blinked. "Wait, not at all." She shook her head gently. "No, Ellis. You're not his father." It felt like being slapped and hugged at the same time. A flood of relief, immediately followed by confusion. Then anger. Why lie? Why drag me through this? I left without calling her. No text. No explanation. I just vanished again. Like she had done to me. But the silence didn't last long. The very next morning, I woke up to 20 missed calls. 6 voicemails. And one message that made my blood run cold. "Ellis, something's wrong. Mason's gone. He left a note. He knows the kid isn't his either." I dropped the phone. Because if Jonah wasn't mine, and he wasn't Mason's, then whose child was he? And why was Marla lying to everyone? The message kept playing in my head on repeat: Mason's gone. He left a note. He knows the kid isn't his either. I stared at the screen, unable to move, unable to breathe. It was like every cell in my body stopped processing oxygen at once. The floor felt unstable. Everything did. My first reaction. She was lying again. She had to be. It wouldn't be the first time Marla twisted facts into weapons. But then another message popped up, from her sister, which I hadn't seen in years. "Hey Ellis. I know this is random, but Marla's in a bad way. Mason left her. Things are complicated. Can you please check on her? She won't talk to anyone. That was when the dread became real. Marla hadn't just fabricated a dramatic twist to pull me back in. Something deeper was unraveling. Against every ounce of good judgment I had left, I drove to her place. I hadn't been there in years. Not since she moved in with Mason. The house looked almost the same, except the roses I once planted along the fence were gone, pulled out, like I never existed. The porch lights were on, even though it was broad daylight, and the curtains were shut tight. I rang the doorbell once. No answer. I knocked louder. And then I heard it, soft crying. Not the baby. Her. She opened the door slowly. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged down both cheeks, hair a tangled mess, like she hadn't slept in days. She looked at me like I was either salvation or punishment. "Where's Jonah?" I asked immediately. She moved aside and let me in without a word. The house was in chaos. Dishes piled up, laundry strewn across the couch, toys everywhere. In the corner, Jonah was asleep in a baby swing, pacifier barely hanging from his lips. He looked peaceful. Completely unaware that his entire identity had just cracked apart. "He's been fussy," she whispered. "I don't think he understands anything, but he knows something's wrong." I turned to her. "You told me he might be mine. You told Mason he was his. The hospital says he's neither. So who is his father, Marla?" She collapsed onto the couch, hands in her hair. I don't know." "You don't know?" My voice rose without permission. "You don't know who the father of your child is?" "I made mistakes, Ellis," she snapped, standing now. "You want the truth? Fine. There was someone else. Just once. A stupid night I never planned on telling anyone about. Not Mason. Not you. I wasn't even sure it happened until it was too late." My heart dropped. "Who?" She looked away, biting her lip hard enough to draw blood. "It doesn't matter. It matters to Jonah. It matters to everyone you dragged into this lie." She turned on me, defensive now. "What do you want from me, Ellis? To say I'm sorry? To admit I ruined everything? Fine. I'm sorry. I ruined everything. I was selfish. I thought Mason would stay, that you'd move on, that Jonah wouldn't need to know. But everything's falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it." I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't faking this. The cracks were real now. The layers of confidence and manipulation had peeled away, leaving behind someone raw, exposed, and scared out of her mind. "I don't know what you expect me to do," I said quietly. "You burned every bridge behind you and now you want someone to carry you across the fire." She didn't answer. Then, as if the universe wanted to add insult to injury, a knock came at the door. We both froze. She peeked through the window, then turned to me, panic in her eyes. "It's him." "Who?" She swallowed hard. "The real father." Before I could process what that meant, she opened the door. And there he was. Standing in the doorway was a man I recognized immediately, not because we were friends, but because I worked with him. For years. Back when Marla and I were still together. It was Tyler. Tyler from accounting. The guy who used to laugh too hard at her jokes during company picnics. The guy I once invited over for dinner. The guy who asked me once, "How do you land a girl like her?" And now, he was standing in the doorway of her house. Looking at Jonah. Looking at me. And not saying a single word. Tyler didn't even flinch when our eyes met. He stood there, one hand gripping the frame of the door like he owned the house, like he was the one who belonged there, like I was the intruder. The same guy who used to share break room coffee with me, who once invited me to his kid's birthday party, now standing in front of me like the final punchline in a years-long, unfunny joke. Marla stood between us, shifting her weight, wringing her hands, saying nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, walk out, grab my car keys and pretend this moment wasn't happening. But instead, I asked the one question no one had the courage to say aloud. How long? Her face crumbled. It was after that fight we had, right before I told you I needed space. That week. I turned to Tyler. And you? You knew she was married. He had the audacity to look embarrassed. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was one night. I didn't even think. You didn't think? I repeated, barely containing myself. You were at our wedding, Tyler. You signed the damn guest book. Marla tried to step in, her voice cracking. It was just that once. I didn't even know I was pregnant until weeks later. I assumed it was Mason's, and when he believed me, I went with it. I couldn't go back to you. I figured, what was the point in dragging anyone else into it? You dragged everyone into it, I shot back. You built your new life on a lie. And now that it's collapsing, you expect someone to hold your hand while it burns. That's when Tyler spoke again, softly. I didn't know Jonah might be mine. Not until she called me 2 nights ago. She said Mason left. Said things weren't adding up and she needed to be sure. She asked if I'd take a test. Oh, now she wants the truth. I laughed, bitter and hollow. After 3 years of this mess. After putting me through hell, almost dragging me into fatherhood for a child that wasn't mine. After destroying Mason's trust. Now we're handing out paternity kits like party favors. No one answered. The only sound was Jonah's soft breathing from the baby swing in the corner. Tyler finally stepped forward, glancing nervously at me. Look, man, I know I messed up. But if he's mine, I'll step up. I'm not gonna walk away from that. And what about Mason? I asked, turning to Marla. Does he even know who this guy is? Her silence told me everything. So Mason left thinking the child wasn't his, but never even learned that the other man was someone we both knew. I shook my head. You didn't just destroy your relationship. You erased everyone else's dignity along the way. You weaponized confusion and called it privacy. Marla's voice was shaking. Ellis, please. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. You weren't trying, I echoed. But you did. The room was thick with shame. No one moved. Even the baby seemed eerily quiet, as if he knew something inside that house was broken. I walked over to the door. Tyler stepped back instinctively, as if he thought I might hit him. I didn't. I just stared at him, this man who'd played backyard poker with me, who once joked about being terrible with women, who now stood here holding my past in his hands. You better hope he's yours, I said coldly. Because if he's not, there's going to be nothing left of this little fantasy you've all been living in. Then I left. I didn't look back. That night, I turned off my phone. I unplugged the internet. I didn't want more texts, more calls, more digital apologies dressed up as regret. I sat in my apartment in total silence, staring at the ceiling for hours. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the loud, furious way I used to be. What I felt now was heavier. Emptier. Like something had finally snapped loose inside me. I had spent so long thinking I was broken because of what Marla did. Because she left. Because she cheated. Because she moved on. But standing in that house, watching her truth unravel like a spool of lies, I realized something. She never moved on. She just hid. And now all her ghosts were knocking at the door. 3 days passed. I didn't call. I didn't answer texts. I didn't ask how the DNA test was going or if Tyler was still around. I told myself I didn't care anymore. that it wasn't my problem. But that was a lie I could only tell myself in daylight. At night, it all came flooding back. Not the pain, surprisingly, but the emptiness. The wasted years, the false memories, the feeling that I had lived a life I never fully understood until it had already ended. On the fourth day, someone knocked on my door. I opened it expecting a package, maybe a neighbor. It was Marla. No makeup. Hair in a knot. Her coat half-zipped like she hadn't slept and barely remembered to get dressed. Her eyes were sunken, but sharp. She wasn't here for small talk. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like she was entering a museum of her past. Her eyes darted to the couch she used to nap on, the bookshelf we once built together, the framed photo I still hadn't taken down. "You should have burned that by now," she whispered, nodding toward the picture of us in the pumpkin patch. "Didn't seem worth the fire," I said. She didn't laugh. She sat down but didn't lean back. Her shoulders stayed tense, like she was ready to run if she had to. "I got the results," she said. I didn't move. "It's Tyler," she confirmed. "He's the father." I waited for the wave of emotion to come, relief, maybe, or vindication. But all I felt was fatigue. The kind that settles deep into your bones when you've been carrying the weight of someone else's choices for far too long. "He's trying," she added. "He wants to be involved. But it's awkward. He doesn't know Jonah. And Mason still won't speak to me. I think he's gone for good." I said nothing. Then she looked up at me with those same eyes that used to tell me she loved me more than anyone ever could. "I made a mess of everything, Ellis. I lied to you, to Mason, to Tyler. I lied to myself. I was scared. I didn't know how to be honest without losing everything. And I lost it anyway." I still didn't respond. I wanted to know why she was really here. And then she said it. "I know I have no right to ask. But I need your help." That stopped me cold. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, voice trembling. "You were the only person who ever loved me for who I was before I started pretending to be someone else. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't know how to rebuild this. I don't know how to be a single mom with a co-parent who's basically a stranger. I don't know who I am anymore." I stood still, arms crossed, staring down at the woman who once left me behind like yesterday's laundry. And I realized something I never expected to feel in that moment. Pity. Not desire. Not longing. Just a hollow ache for the person she used to be. She looked up. "Please say something." So I did. "I brought someone with me," I said. She blinked. "What?" I opened the door. A second later, in stepped a woman, tall, poised, with kind eyes and a folder in her hand. Marla stood up instantly, confused. "This is Julia," I said. "She's a custody mediator and family counselor. She's also someone who helped me figure out how to stand up again when you knocked everything over." Julia stepped forward and offered a hand. Marla didn't take it. "I figured if you really want help," I said, "you'll take it from someone who's not emotionally entangled in your chaos." Marla was speechless. She looked back and forth between us, her lip trembling. "You came here thinking I'd step back in," I continued, "like the dependable backup character in the story of your life. But I'm not that guy anymore. I don't want revenge. I don't want apologies. I want peace. And I think Jonah deserves that too." Finally, Marla sank back into the couch, defeated. "I didn't come here to manipulate you," she said, almost in a whisper. "I swear. I just didn't know where else to go." I looked at Julia, then back at Marla. "You came to the right place," I said. "But not for the reason you thought." And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, I didn't feel powerless. I felt done. The mediation session started a week later. Julia was incredible. Patient. Unbiased. Honest in a way most people are too afraid to be. Marla showed up to every meeting, sometimes with tears, sometimes with attitude, but always with an uncomfortable kind of sincerity that made me believe, for the first time, she was actually trying to rebuild, not just for herself, but for Jonah. Tyler attended too. He was stiff and awkward and clearly overwhelmed, but I gave him credit, he didn't run. He listened, took notes, asked questions about co-parenting. Watching him try was surreal. This was the man who helped blow my life apart, and yet here we were, working together to fix something neither of us fully understood. We didn't become friends. We never will. But I learned to let go of the bitterness. Not for him, for me. And Jonah? That kid's a light in a storm. I never imagined I'd feel anything for him. He wasn't mine, not biologically, not legally, not by any measure. But something changed after that first mediation session where he sat in a little beanbag chair and drew a picture of 3 stick figures, one with curly hair, one with glasses, and one with green eyes. "I drew you, Mr. Ellis," he said proudly. "You're nice." I didn't cry in front of him. But when I got home, I broke down. Because even though I didn't get the family I thought I wanted, no redemption arc with my ex-wife, no fairy tale return to what was, I got something better. I got closure. I got healing. And strangely, I got purpose. These days, I help Julia part-time at the mediation center. Turns out, I'm pretty good at helping people talk through impossible things. Maybe because I've lived them. Maybe because I know what it's like to stand on the edge of your own story and wonder if the next chapter is even worth writing. It is. It always is. And Marla? She's doing better. She's not perfect, she still over-apologizes, still gets defensive, still forgets boundaries sometimes. But she's learning. She's growing. And in the rare moments when we bump into each other at the park or at drop-off, we smile. Not like strangers. Not like lovers. But like survivors. So, no, this isn't a revenge story. It's not a collapse or a comeback. It's just, real life. Messy. Unexpected. Quietly beautiful. And sometimes, that's enough. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever been in a situation where life didn't go the way you planned, but somehow turned out even better, drop your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a little reminder that healing isn't linear, but it's possible. See you in the next story.